Who's offering? Haftarat Tzav. I make no promises. If you decide to join me on this week's journey, we might discover amazing insights or we might hit a dead end. I've chosen to set out. Whether or not you join is up to you. And yes, once again, I'll discuss the Haftarah of Parashat Tzav, not Shabbat HaGadol. To the untrained eye, Parashat Tzav seems redundant. The average reader can't detect the difference between the offerings in Parashat Vayikra and those in Tzav, and even if they do notice one or two differences, they wonder whether it genuinely justifies separating them into two parashot. Couldn't the missing pieces just have been added to Vayikra? The most well-known answer to this question, or at least one I'm familiar with, comes from the Ramban. According to his explanation, the parashot were written twice because they were intended for different audiences. Vayikra addresses the people of Israel, the owners of the sacrifices, speak to the children of Israel, whereas Tzav speaks to the Kohanim, the technicians of the ritual, command Aharon and his sons. Why do I bring this up in a piece about the Haftarah? Because although I'm not yet sure how, I have a feeling that the differences between the Haftarot of Vayikra and Tzav might shed light on the parasha itself, or maybe not. I'm pressing on regardless. Here's a quick summary of what I focused on in last week's discussion of the Haftarah of Vayikra. Despite Hashem's expectation that the people would bring him burnt offerings, olot, shlamim, and grain offerings, menachot, you have not brought me your sheep for your burnt offerings or for your shlamim. They did not. Instead, they wearied him with their sins and iniquities. According to the Haftarah, the sin Yeshaya rebukes the people for, at least in part, is their neglect of sacrificial commandments, or at least burnt offerings, peace offerings, and grain offerings. It's hard to say the same about the Haftarah for Tzav. In it, Yirmiyah recommends that the people skip the burnt offerings and only bring shlamim, peace offerings. At them, they can at least eat. He continues by claiming that Hashem didn't command them to offer sacrifices at all, only to obey his voice. For on the day I brought them out of Egypt, I did not speak to your ancestors or command them concerning burnt offerings and sacrifices. This throws traditional commentators into a tizzy, since they're well versed in the Torah text, including the very sections the sages connected to this week's Haftarah, and they're confident they can point to a dozen places at least where Hashem did command such offerings. Nevertheless, they agree with the rest of the prophet's message. Don't follow your evil inclinations, and certainly don't burn your children in fire, or a command I believe we can all get behind. Without diving into the important exegetical debate that troubled the commentators, I think it's worth focusing on the differences in each Haftarah's starting point. The Haftarah for Vayikra seems to call for a fulfillment of its parasha's verses. Tzav's Haftarah, on the other hand, appears to reject them. The question I want to explore further is, how can we examine these differences, and what might they teach us? First, let's thank Ramban. His answer about the differences between the parashot can also serve us here. If he distinguishes between the audiences for each parasha, perhaps we can do the same with the Haftarot. Maybe Yeshaya is speaking to a people who have abandoned sacrificial worship, whereas Yirmiyahu addresses those who, under the cover of sacrificial rituals, have become morally corrupt. These aren't contradictions, just context-sensitive messages. Why, if so, did the sages attach the expectant Haftarah to Vayikra and the critical one to Tzav? Perhaps this too aligns with Ramban's division. Although the oral Torah acknowledges the role of communal sacrifices to keep the altar from being neglected, that's not what Vayikra focuses on. In Vayikra, the root kuf reish bet, to offer or draw near, karav, appears often in possessive forms. His offering, your offering, their offering. A person chooses to bring a sacrifice, an offering. This sense of ownership is especially emphasized in burnt, peace, and grain offerings, the ones encouraged by the Haftarah. Tzav, according to Ramban, addresses the technicians, the Kohanim. While a sense of ownership still exists, it's muted amidst the technical procedures. Perhaps, yes perhaps, Yirmiyah's prophecy warns of a potential pitfall, becoming overly fixated on the technicalities of the sacrifice's service. This doesn't mean we should neglect them. As in any project, technical details matter. We only need to remember their proper place. It's time to end with a disclaimer. Everything I've said relates to my understanding of the Haftarot's starting points, not their full content. At some point in both Haftarot, the content becomes entangled, suggesting that sometimes intentions and actions don't align. In any case, I hope you intended to join me on this journey and that you arrived at the destination alongside me. In memory of my beloved and heroic student, Amichai Shimon ben Ishai and Bat Yarubin Hashem Yikom Damo, Dovi Holtz, one who loves Tanakh.